Welcome, everyone, to part two of the webinar on emotional intelligence. It's Victoria Beale with the LTAP Center, and I'm pleased to once again have with me Scott Warrick, who is a nationally known trainer on emotional intelligence and many other disciplines. I'm going to do a couple quick housekeeping items, then turn things over to Scott. So first off, hopefully you remember from last time that yeah, there is sound. Apparently someone is having a sound issue. I'll deal with that in a second. We'll put questions in the question box, and I will ship those over to Scott for him to be able to respond to. The second thing is we want to use the raised hand feature this time. So if Scott asks a question and asks you to raise your hand in response if you agree or disagree or however he phrases it, please look for that raised hand feature on your GoToWebinar box and use that. And then after the question ends, I'll lower everybody's hand so you can raise it again for another question. The last thing I want to mention about responses is that I will be unmuting everybody here very shortly, and we would ask you please keep yourself muted on your end. If you don't, I'll do a remute of you, but we want to give you the opportunity to unmute, ask questions, and respond and talk to Scott during today's webinar. So please cooperate, keep yourself muted on your end. I'm going to unmute you on my end. Last but not least, if you didn't grab the handout the last time, it is in the handout box again today. So with that, I'm turning things over to Scott. You ready, Scott?
All set. Okay, well, we're going to have another fun time today. And those of you who are following along with the handout, we are starting from emotional intelligence. Is that important in sports? Okay, and that's on slide 54. But before we get started, just to start off here, does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns about anything we talked about last time? Anything pressing on you? You can open your mic or chat me up, put something in the questions box. Anybody got anything? So I'll make sure everybody's on the same page before we move forward. Everybody got her? Okay.
I'm still working on unmuting him, Scott, so you may want to ask that again here in a little bit. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So are they still muted?
The majority of them, but I'm going as quick as I can.
Okay. Oh, you got to do them individually.
Yep, okay. All 55.
Oh my, okay. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just start just sort of applying a little bit what we talked about last time. And so you can either put something in the question box or raise your hand here. But how many folks here are football fans? So raise your hand or put a yes or a no in the question box. What do you think? Any football fans out there? See if we're going to get anybody. And you'll see me look back and forth. I'm running two screens here. I'm not doing something more interesting off here to my right. I'm looking at the chat boxes and all those kinds of stuff. So, okay, looks like we're good with the question mark. Yes, football fans, yes, getting them from Ryan, Patrick, William, sometimes, yeah, I got you. Now, here's one of the things, and I always look at things a little differently, and that's what I want to kind of clue you folks into. We're going to look for these pitfalls of emotional intelligence all around you. Because if you can recognize these pitfalls and things that we all do, probably you can take that 5 seconds and slow your brain down and let your frontal lobes catch up. Because here's one thing that just drives me crazy. It's kind of like, oops, let me see here. There we go. Okay. Now, this is Mr. Hall. He was a star football player for Ohio State, and here we are at the Michigan game, and you can kind of see he's rather upset. All right. Now, here's what happened. It was a kickoff, and Michigan put a couple of scrubs out there, guys that hardly ever play, and they are out there taunting Mr. Hall. Okay, so now freeze right there. This guy is a starter. This guy is a big deal for us. And they sent these third stringers or whatever out there to harass him. And of course, what does he do? He punches one of them. Okay. Now freeze right there. Does anybody have any comments on that? Is that smart? or chat me up. You can go ahead and put something in the question box, and we'll look at the votes over here. How many people think this is a stupid thing to do? This is stupid. Yep, not a good thing. Yeah, I'm getting Laura here. All right, getting some other comments in here. Yeah, smart by the other team. Absolutely. And I will tell you, if you're Michigan these days, you'll try just about anything. It worked. It worked. Okay, so every time you see an offsides in football, I want you to think emotional intelligence. That is what that is. Focus. Get control of your mind. And I'll tell you, anybody who's ever watched sports for much at all recognizes 90% of it is mental, right? Look at Simone Biles, right? The physical abilities are there, but her head wasn't where it needed to be to compete in the 2021 Olympics, which are actually the 2020 Olympics, but you kind of get that. This is what happens. Okay, so, oh yeah, brilliant move on Michigan's part, and we fell for it. And here's the bottom line. If you cannot control yourself, other people will control you. And so let's look through here and give me some feedback if these disturb you, or if you see this. Okay, so there are pitfalls of emotional intelligence, and why those are important is so that you can recognize, uh-oh, this is a pitfall for me. This could really do me some harm. And understand, why do we want to be emotionally intelligent people? Because it's good for you. It's good for you that you won't do the stupid things that other people do. And I will tell you, when you start studying emotional intelligence and you apply it to these pitfalls, you will see it all around you every day. And I will tell you, it will actually start to depress you when you start to notice all of the emotional children around you in this world. It is not their IQ that is going to bring them down. It's they got too big for their britches and disaster strikes. Okay, so let's look at our first pitfall here. And just look at this photo here on your far right. That's Napoleon. Okay, now he has a famous ego, right? This is how he got dressed for his portrait. Now look at that. Does that tell you anything about the man? Does that tell you anything about the way he thinks of himself? Yeah, any EI pointer for my golf game? Oh yeah, Michael, sure. Meditate. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I refer to verbal JEET, which you'll see a little bit later here. It is emotional intelligence plus those EPR skills, empathic listening, parroting, and rewards. That's verbal JEET. Those two combined can address and resolve conflict. People who study martial arts are significantly more emotionally intelligent from the beginning than anybody else. Because it's not learning how to kill people, it's the mental focus, the ability to focus your mind. And I'll tell you, Michael, you've got an excellent point here. I want to point out, when the Navy SEALs started focusing on meditation and emotional intelligence, the pass rate for the Navy SEALs jumped over 5, 6, 7%. Because now they could overcome fear. Getting your frontal lobes developed so that they can control those amygdalas. Well, you've already done it, haven't you? You've already done it. When you slow down and think, you realize that cows drink water, not milk. Isn't that right? So, yep, good for golf game too. Absolutely. Okay, so look at this narcissist. What kind of a raging narcissist dresses like that to become emperor? I mean, I'll tell you, okay? Now, freeze right there. You couldn't tell him anything. Brilliant military commander, absolutely. But does anybody here think that it's a good idea to invade Russia. Anybody thinking that's a good idea? Have you looked at a map? Have you looked at a globe? Okay, if you were an advisor to Napoleon and he says, hey, I have kicked Europe's butt. I own Europe. And here's this sociopath that actually moves into Egypt and decides to fire his cannons at the Sphinx's face. Oh my gosh, what kind of a person does that? Okay, so now he's got another good idea. Let's invade Russia, right? I already took Germany and all these other countries, so let's invade Russia. Does anybody have a comment? No, it's impossible to occupy. Thank you, William. Absolutely. If the army doesn't kill you, the winter will. And if you are going to invade Russia, you better get it done really good in a 6-month period of time, because winter is coming. And I'll tell you, and so look what's happening here. He cannot control his emotions and ego, so he bases his decisions and reaction on ego and emotion, not logic. Okay? They rush to judgment without investigating any facts. They cannot communicate in conflict situations due to their uncontrolled emotions. Okay, can you see disaster coming? So what does this mean to you? Slow down and think. If you do not slow down and think, you think egg whites are yellow, don't you? And this is how we all are. We all have to do this, okay? But I will tell you, great disasters that you see are because someone got too big for their britches, just like your grandma used to say. So in the end, they have a reactionary approach that destroys trust. Remember we talked earlier? What is trust? Is it safe? Is it safe to disagree with you? And if it isn't safe to disagree with you, then there's no trust whatsoever. So let's just see what happens. Other people clam up. Critical decision-making disappears. It dies. And I will tell you, as your IQ goes up, as your titles increase, as your time on the job increases, our emotional intelligence tends to drop like a rock. Why? Hey, you know how long I've been here. Do you know that I'm Fuhrer? Okay, now here's a good one. Worked out great for the Allies. D-Day. Eisenhower sends the troops in, invades Normandy. Hitler thought we were coming in through Calais. So he's got a few panzer divisions of German top-notch soldiers up in Calais. Down south, France is getting invaded by the Allies. Okay, now the Fuhrer is asleep. It's way early in the morning. The Fuhrer is not happy when you wake him up. Okay, is anybody here gonna wake him up and tell him that France is being invaded by the Allies at Normandy and not Calais? Because if you wake him up, you could send those panzer divisions down south to pretty much wipe out our troops. That's what could happen. Okay, anybody here, raise your hand or open your mic or chat me up. Anybody here gonna wake him up? Any thoughts?
Seeing crickets.
Yeah, I'm like, but are you crazy? Now, let me get this straight. Are you gonna lose the, yeah, not me. William's saying not me. David's saying no way. Laura's telling me no, absolutely. Okay, so you see what happens. Strategic goals die. Okay, they die. And I'll tell you, Forbes magazine right here has honed in on this. The #1 reason organizations do not hit their strategic goals is because we do not address conflict, because it's not safe. #1. And Forbes magazine tells us in a good year, 1/3 of all the companies and organizations in this country will hit their strategic goals. That's it. 1/3. That means 67% will not. In some years, it's been 4%. So let's apply this. Okay, let's just apply this. I like real world application so that you can spot this. It is the early 1980s, like 1981, 1982. And you've got a bunch of engineers that come to you. You run Kodak. Now, first of all, Kodak is a Fortune 100 company, huge organization. If it wasn't for Fujifilm, Kodak would be a monopoly. That's how big they are. And Kodak makes its money by pretty much giving away the cameras at cost or sometimes for free, because you got to buy the film. You know, it's almost like, you know, Rockefeller, he'd almost like to have you give away cars because he's going to sell you the gas. Okay, that makes sense. Now you've got these young engineers. Oh, and by the way, you are all pretty old. You run Eastman Kodak's, Eastman Smith Kodak, and so you're in your 70s or 80s. And I hate to define that as old, but no matter where you go, that's kind of old. Okay. These engineers are telling you, we've got to change the way we do business. We have just developed something called the digital processor. This is going to be a miracle. There's not going to be dark rooms anymore. You are going to be able to download pictures from a digital camera into something called a PC or a computer. And you're going to be able to bring these pictures up and you can develop them and print them right there. So we've got to stop selling the film. We've got to change everything over. We are going to sell cameras, and the cameras are going to be $100, $200, $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 for cameras, because everything's going to be on a digital chip. We've got to completely change the way that we are operating. Okay, now give me some input here. How many people think it would be a good idea to listen to these young engineers? These engineers might be onto something, and so we should put some resources in R&D and really get this digital processor going. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Should we do that? You can raise your hands or open your mic or chat me up. Any thoughts here? Everybody processing this. Yeah, I got a question mark from William. Okay, that's a good one right there. Okay, William. Oh, yeah, I'm getting some from a few other folks here. Michael. Oh, yeah, getting some good question marks. Yes, you should. Absolutely. Laura's telling me. Morgan's telling me. Laura. Executive said digital cameras will never take off. Thank you, David. That is exactly what they said. That is exactly what. And think of the response. Do you know who we are? Do you know who we are? We are a Fortune 100 company. All right. We are Eastman Kodak Smith. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. All right. So they basically, the engineers. Okay. They pretty much just bullied them. So the engineers left. And where do you think they went? Canon, Minolta, Nikon. So, you know, to this day, Kodak has declared bankruptcy. Today, they're a little paper company and just a hiccup in the history of photography. Pretty much run out of business. And do you know, to this day, you cannot buy a good digital American camera? Does that bother anybody? Would our country be better off if we could manufacture and sell good digital cameras? What do you think? Hey, there's a lot of money in photography, folks, particularly for people who have kids and grandkids. Okay, can you see the emotional intelligence here, or the lack of it? Maybe, just maybe, these young whippersnappers know what they're talking about. So let me ask you, do the facts only get in the way of a good opinion? Do you rush to judgment? Do you get all the facts before you make a decision, or as many as you can get? And I'll tell you, I want you to be thinking about vaccinations and anti-vaxxers. I want you to be thinking of mask wearing and anti-mask wearing. Okay, so I'll tell you, just because I saw it on the internet from a not reliable source doesn't mean it's true, one way or the other. And I'll tell you, a lot of folks, basically, all they want is affirmation for what they already think. Okay? I mean, we could go on days and days and days, but I will tell you right now, this is how we got Vietnam. And if you want to Google that, Google the Pentagon Papers, where everybody knew it was a lost cause. All right, so pitfall number 2. Okay, here's a good one. Oops. Pitfall number 2. They cannot admit their own mistakes and will not accept feedback, so they can't improve. Okay, now freeze right here. Either vote for them, give me a hands up or something, or chat me up or open your mic. How many people in here have ever really screwed something up? In your career or your life, you've really screwed something up bad. Anybody here ever do that? I'm just waiting for the, yep, I like that, Ryan. Yep, right to the point. Okay, yep, getting some from William. Okay, absolutely, getting some other marks here. Absolutely. Isn't Michael, that's great. Isn't that how you learn? I will tell you, I am a firm believer of screwing stuff up. I am, because, boy, I'll bet you never make that mistake again. Okay, you do understand that's what case law is all about. All these cases, someone somewhere screwed something up. They end up in court. That's why case law is so important. We're going to learn from that mistake. Okay, now, let me ask you. Nobody can disagree with me. It's a my way or the highway, and I got Nixon over here. When things go wrong, they blame everybody else trying to correct the situation. Okay, now think about this. If Bill Clinton, and I don't know if you realize that special on Monica Lewinsky is coming out here soon. If Bill Clinton had admitted that he had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, what would have happened? Rather than denying it? Oh, and lying to Congress. You really don't want to lie to Congress. They get real upset when you do that. We call that perjury. What would have happened if he'd have come out and said, yes, I did, it was a mistake, and more than likely I won't do it again? Do you have any thoughts on that? Would he have been impeached? Okay, and I'll tell you right now, yeah, it would have all gone away. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you. And look at your history. Alexander Hamilton. Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, Alexander Hamilton. Now, it hurt his reputation, but he would have been impeached. He was impeached for lying to Congress. Okay? Alexander Hamilton, years ago, was in the newspaper that he was having an affair with a married woman, which was scandalous back then. Okay? And so the press was right there asking Alexander Hamilton all about this. Alexander Hamilton, just being Alexander Hamilton, came out. They said, did you do this? And he said, yeah, of course I did. Sure I did. Might do it again, too. It's none of your business. Now, politically, that might not be the best thing to say, but it went away. Okay? Except, hey, this is something that I did. I am taking accountability for it, and we're going to move on. And I'll tell you right now, if you want to read what I think is the greatest management leadership book ever written, is Good to Great. Just a phenomenal book. Okay, now I don't read books. I can read. I am capable of reading, but I've read so much in my lifetime that I am now allergic to it. A good way to put me to sleep is to read a book. Just knocks me out. So I like audiobooks. I like to go to audiobooks. Okay. In the Good to Great book, there's this fantastic aspect of the great level 5 leaders. They have a mirror versus a window mentality. And I want you to think of the humility that comes with this, okay? They say, hey, when things go well, the emotionally intelligent great leaders look out the window and they give the praise to their people. I got great people. They really make me look good. That's great. When things go wrong, the emotionally intelligent great leaders look into the mirror and they ask, what should I have done differently? I'm the one who's supposed to be running this. What didn't I see? So you see why they're great leaders. They stand behind their people, and when there's a problem, they work to fix the problem. And they automatically assume The problem is with them. Now, empathy. Now, let me just clue you in here. Empathy is the Achilles heel of our society. Empathy. If you cannot see somebody else's point of view, game over. And I have tested hundreds of people's emotional intelligence scores, given them EQ assessments, and I will tell you, seeing somebody else's point of view in this world, building relationships in American society is not seen as being businesslike. It's not seen as being important. What is important? Independence, assertiveness, the John Wayne, grab them by the nose, kick them in the pants type of approach. Does anybody have any input for me? If you have coworkers or subordinates or superiors, and you go in and you order them to do things, and you're very assertive, is that going to fare well for you? And I'm going to assume you're right on everything you're saying. Ordering people around and not building relationships, what's going to happen to you? Is that going to be good? No, I'm getting lots of no's here. Yeah, Ryan, Laura, absolutely. No. So you see, they can't see the perspective of other people, and they don't care. And you'll notice off to your right here is the prince. This is Machiavellian. The end justifies the means. So I'm very self-centered. Yeah, Morgan, I like this. Everybody look at the chat here, the questions. Morgan, I don't like it because you're human. And understand, this is where I like to really focus in. All I care is that you're human. That's all I care about. And if you're human, then I know your emotions and ego kick in 17 thousandths of a second. Humans are motivated by their self-esteem. You get people who feel good about themselves and you have a relationship with you, they will march through fire for you. Oh, but if you're very self-centered, you manipulate people for your own ends, can't build trusting relationships with other people, you are going to crash and die. That is what's going to happen. And I mean life skills. And you will see when we start looking at resolving conflict, EPR. The E is for empathic listening. That is one of the greatest skills you can ever build as a person. But it isn't something that is valued in our society. You better start. You better start. Oh, let me ask you right now. Is it difficult to hire people these days? Any thoughts on this? Are we running into a labor crunch or a labor shortfall? Yes, Morgan's right there with the fingers. Oh, Ryan, absolutely. I'm seeing this right quick. Absolutely. Yeah. Because the baby, absolutely from Ryan, the baby boomers are retiring or dying. Yeah, David and Delilah kicking in here. Yes. So guess who's replacing them? The Gen Zers and the Gen Yers. That is basically anybody under the age of 30. I will tell you, they are the name of the game, and you might not like it. Yes, it's hard to find the right people. Thank you, Laura, because I just don't want a body with a pulse and fog in a mirror, right? I want somebody who is going to be a team player, who we can build relationships with. Well, I'll tell you right now, I have a lot. Actually, I've got 2 or 3 on-site trainings on this type of stuff, emotional intelligence, but how to deal with Gen Yers and Gen Zers. They demand that you see their point of view. And if you do not do that, well, they will quit and leave, and they'll get a better job that next day. The days of having a glut of labor in this country are gone, and they will never be back. They will never be back, and this is thanks to World War II, the glut of labor that we have had in the workforce for years. The baby boomers have been moving through our economy for the last 70 years like a rat through a snake. This big bulge of rat going through the snake. And they've been the curse of my existence because they were right in front of me and they always held the jobs. Well, guess what? They're retiring, largely because of COVID, or they're dying. There aren't enough Gen Yers and Gen Zers to replace them. And that's Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yes, you are going to be fighting other employers for employees. That is what's going to happen. And then when you do get them in, if you do not try to see their point of view, slow down and think, they will leave. Now, let me show you a typical trick that I put into my programs. And I love this because I get so many folks that fall for it. I had a consultant once, and she said, you know, your slides are kind of dated. Oh, we got some more comments here. They can have the highest testing grade and interviewing skills. But yeah, if you can't relate, you got a problem, don't you, Laura? Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, that's exactly what we're running into. Okay, we need that relationship building. Now, I had a consultant tell me, you know, you need to quote, quote, freshen up your slides, because a lot of the people in the room, you know, don't know who Underdog is. And I can just sit there and I just smile because you fell right into it. I said, well, yeah, you're right. Underdog went off the air in 1965 when Wally Cox died. But he's a very, very friendly character and just, you know, sort of the anti-hero type of thing. And so I asked the consultant, I said, do you think your young folks understand that there are some things that happened in this world before they were born that are important? And she kind of looked at me. I said, are they so self-centered that they think everything should be geared to them? I said, we have 50, 60 people in the room, ages ranging from early 20s to 60s. So I should gear everything to the young whippersnappers and nothing for the older folks. Or if there's something in the program that they don't recognize, isn't it their responsibility to investigate and find out what it is? What do you think? Should everything be geared to one group of people and exclude everybody else? I think it should be for everybody. And so I purposefully do this. I put things in there that younger folks wouldn't know. And then I put things in there that older folks wouldn't know, because the same thing applies. The bottom line is, that's empathy. Yeah, silver spoon, Ryan, a little bit. I will tell you, yeah, a whole different way of raising children. And I understand, we have created this monster. These kids are going to come in. I'll tell you right now, these kids are absolutely fantastic when it comes to technology, on and on and on. But you know what? We have 5,000-year-old brains. You're still human. Conflict cannot be addressed and resolved through texting. No, you do not do that through email. You have to relate. And there are some things that you are going to see that you don't understand. Well, guess what? That's your shortfall. Oh, thank you, Delilah. Thank you. Or Della, I'm sorry. I got to get my glasses on here. Della, I'm sorry about that. Okay. Now, does anybody know who this guy is? The blonde-headed guy? Oh, by the way, the little evil character on either side, that's which we turn into if we don't control ourselves. Evil 3-year-old versions of ourselves. Does anybody recognize who this blonde guy is? Got anybody here in their 20s or teens? Okay. All right, well, we'll hold up the suspense here. That's Naruto. That is the #1 most popular anime in the world. And I always get pushback from the older folks, because the younger folks tend to know who this is. And say, wow, that's Japanese, that's not here. 1/3 of all Americans are anime fans. Anime, Japanese cartoons. They're called a manga if you are in a comic book, and it's called anime, which is a cartoon. You mean to tell me that 107 million Americans are tapped into this, and it's not important for you to be aware of it? Okay. So yeah, we want to tap into other people's points of view. And then, oh, see if you've ever met somebody like this, someone who is mind blind. And the news, I'll tell you, you want a great exercise? Watch the news. I'm going to give you a checklist here of all these things, and just check them off. As you see people doing incredibly, incredibly stupid things and flushing their lives away, it's going to be always one of these pitfalls of emotional intelligence, and oftentimes a couple of them. They don't realize the destructive impact they have on others, or they don't care. They're like Pepe Le Pew, who walks through the workplace giving off this horrendous stench, and they think they smell great. So there's a class helping, oh, here we go, Anthony. There's a class helping Gen X and Boomers learn how to deal with Gen Y and Z, but is there a class helping Gen Y and Z learn how to deal with Baby Boomers and Gen Xers? Absolutely, Anthony, absolutely. And that's why I'm trying to make sure that we realize here, older folks aren't going to get that. So how do you communicate with older folks? Younger folks are not going to get that. And I purposely put things in just to hear the response. Well, that's outdated. And so that's a little self-centered. Okay. So no, you are absolutely right. Thank you, Anthony. Whenever you are doing communication training, and that's why empathic listening is so critical. Think of it this way. I am a 60-year-old white Anglo-Saxon Protestant straight male. Born and raised in Ohio, got a couple of kids, few degrees. Do I have to stop and think and look at somebody else's perspective if I'm talking to a young Asian female who's 22 years old, born and raised in inner Chicago? Do we have a different way of looking at things? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that works two ways. Empathy is for every human. So I'll tell you, I don't know if anybody's told you this yet or not, but when you hire young people, you're a mentor. Yeah, Ryan and Laura kicking in. Yes, that's got to go two ways, doesn't it? Great point, Anthony. Okay. Now, you see the emotional children? Did somebody have something? I didn't want to cut you off. Okay. Well, this is my wall of shame. Oh, by the way, these are the only ones I could fit on here. And there's Andrew Cuomo. Okay, so just a buffoon. All right, now I got news for you. When you do an investigation and you line everybody up and you got 11, 12, 13 women who all have the same corroborating story, and most of them have never met, that's the truth. That's the truth. Okay, now think about this. Is it safe to go up to Andrew Cuomo 10, 15 years ago when he was first getting started with this stuff, or Harvey, or Gary Hart, or Matt Lauer, or Charlie, and say, hey, what's wrong with you? You don't say things like that to women. Is that safe to go up to any of these guys and tell them that they're out of line when they were first getting started doing this type of stuff? Just rude comments to women. Is that safe? Because everybody at NBC knew. Nope, it isn't safe, Ryan. Absolutely, yeah. Now, you should do it, shouldn't you, Morgan? Yeah, probably not. Okay, you feel the ego, the mind blind, and we've got, hey, how dare anybody correct me? Oh, it's a kiss of death. And look what happened to him. Mind blind. I'll tell you, you got to have somebody in your life who will tell you what's what. Micromanaging other people is a sign of low emotional intelligence. They believe no one can do anything as well as they can, so they build very little trust or increase the abilities of others. This is Lee Iacocca. Lee, okay, and let me tell you, as an individual performer, he was a fantastic performer. Literally pulled Chrysler out of bankruptcy in the early 80s and late 90s by his teeth. But his ego was so big, no one could disagree with him. No one was ever developed. He did everything himself, and he was proud of the fact that when he left Chrysler, that they fell to the Germans, Daimler Chrysler. Well, I mean, what a great testimony to how great you are, that as soon as you leave, the place dies. No, your job as a leader is to develop other people. His ego couldn't take it, and the Good to Great book did not put him as a great leader. You got a comment here from Laura. They were probably a little off in high school and college. Yeah, yeah. This is a narcissist. Okay, these guys are narcissists. Absolutely. Gary Hart. If you're not familiar with who Gary Hart is, Google him. But if Gary Hart had not been caught fooling around having an affair on the boat called the Monkey Business, which is just absolutely amazing to me, if he hadn't done that, you would have never heard of Bill Clinton. Opened the door to Clinton's presidency. And so finally, they suppress or escalate conflict. That's the attack and retreaters that we talk about, or we'll talk about here. They don't resolve conflict. They talk about you behind your back because they're a passive aggressive, or they attack you to your face. That ends in disaster. Okay, so they basically enable bullying behavior, whether it is passive aggressive or whether it is attacking. This is your checklist. I'm going to shoot this off after today as just a single sheet check off. Keep this handy. Watch the news. Have this with you when you're watching the news and just check them off. Politicians are great for getting at least 2 or 3 of these in one sitting. Okay? Can't control your emotions and ego. Dismiss opinions that disagree with theirs. Little or no empathy for others. They're mind blind. They micromanage other people. Or they either suppress or escalate conflict. That is a recipe for utter disaster. And you know what? Not going to happen to us. The higher you go in an organization, the lower you have to bow, the more people you serve. Make sense? Okay, so we looked at emotional intelligence. Let's look at what is a direct cousin or a subset of that, retreating and attacking. Okay, so when you are in conflict or when you're talking to somebody, you are the pitcher of the message. You're the sender. Okay, so you have 3 styles of pitching, and very simple. You see that based on fight or flight. You got attackers. Okay, so what's the attacker do? I tell it like it is, and I attack people. And I'll tell you, we run into those folks every so often, and it's very easy to see. What do people do when you attack them? They get you back later. They attack you. And at the other far end, you got Aunt B. If you don't know who Aunt B is, Google her. Andy Griffith Show. She's supposed to be so nice. She's so sweet. She bakes pies. Oh no, she is a vicious harpy. Nasty, nasty person. Why? Because she never tells anybody the truth. She waits until you leave and then stabs you in the back. Okay, so let's apply these here. Now, let me tell you, something to think about. Most people in this world are retreaters. They are passive aggressive. And think about it. More people would rather run away from a fight than engage. If they were given their druthers, they would rather run away than engage in a conflict. Okay. So these are the people who say, I'm a nice person. Oh, I would never say anything to your face. I wait until you leave. These are the little angel pictures. They're so sweet. They're so nice. And they stab you in the back. Okay, now, freeze right here. I do this for a lot of social workers and psychologists sometimes, a lot of marriage counselors. And every time I do this, the marriage counselors speak up and they say, that's it right there. That's it. People come into marriage counseling at 100, 125, 150 bucks an hour to talk about things they should have been talking about at the kitchen table for the last 5 years. Is that accurate? Yeah. Let me tell you, we humans are wired for fight or flight. You know what that means? We are hardwired to get divorced and fired. That will not serve you well. Served Fred Flintstone great 5,000 years ago, but most of us are not afraid of getting eaten by tigers. So let me tell you, has anybody ever had a situation where you had a conflict at work and it's gone by the end of the day? Don't worry about it anymore. But if you also had those situations where a day or two later, your stomach is still growling over that, or you go home and you go to sleep and 2, 3, 4 in the morning, your stomach is rumbling and you wake up in a cold sweat because you are still upset. Anybody ever have that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we have that. And you know what? That is your gut telling you that you absolutely have to address this issue. Yeah, I'm getting a yes from Ryan, Michael, Laura. Okay. You listen to that gut, because remember, that gut, you're going into fight or flight. And no, we have to address an issue. If your gut is telling you this is a serious problem, you got to go address it. This is why nice people stink. Oh, I'm a nice person. I would never want to say anything to your face. No, that's an evil harpy. And look at old Aunt Bee there with her bitty friend Clara. They don't talk to people about their problems. They sit around and talk about them. Now, I tell you, I get to coach and counsel a lot of gossipers. And somebody's sitting there gossiping, and I'll bring them in and say, okay, I've heard this has happened, that's happened. What's going on? And one of the questions I will always ask, are you making it safe or unsafe in this organization? Well, I'm not doing anything. No, you are talking about other people behind their back. You are creating an unsafe work environment. You're not allowed to do that. And I'll tell you right now, I coach them once. I'm a big believer in coaching twice. Then I go to written warnings, and then I fire them. It is better to fire the bully than to fire the person who just destroyed a $10,000 copier. See, we've got everything all back asswards, okay? Why? Oh, somebody just broke a $10,000 piece of equipment. Well, yeah, that's bad. People do lose it and do that. But every employee working for you is a $50,000 to $80,000 investment. Oh, and by the way, copiers don't sue you. They also don't come back and shoot you either. Oh, and that copier is replaceable. Don't think for a minute that an employee is replaceable. We got to start thinking of employees and bullying in a whole different way of thinking. And I'll tell you right now, I require employees to speak up when they see somebody doing something wrong. It is not optional, because I will tell you right now, and this is right from the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's new guidelines for harassment training. Bullying stops within 10 seconds, 57% of the time, when a bystander speaks up. This is what you want in your organization. Otherwise, you're going to continue to have an organization where it is not safe and people won't work for you. So think about this. We are all human. We have all done this, haven't we? We have all been the weak link in the relationship because we're not saying anything and then our gut turns. That is the problem. So why do we take classes like this? So that we can recognize and identify the problem, and we're not going to do it again. Now, let me ask you, how many people does it take to bring an organization down? Do we have a theory on that one? I know you've all heard this before, but how many people does it take to bring an organization down? One. Thank you, William. One from Morgan. Okay, there we go. Yep, getting some good feedback here. Yeah, but think about this. This is probably the most famous pedophile. Laura's given us a one. Most famous pedophile of my lifetime, Jerry Sandusky. Okay, now think about this. Penn State settled a child molestation case with Jerry Sandusky in 1971. Did we get that? 1971. He was not caught again by the Patriot News until 2011. So yeah, Penn State knew about all these molestations that had been happening and the problem with Jerry and didn't do anything about it. So who is responsible for all of the little boys who were molested from 1971 to 2011? Who's responsible? Any ideas? Obviously, Jerry is. But who else is responsible? Who should have been protecting these little boys? Penn State administration. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, and Laura gives us a great comment. One person because they will affect others. Okay, now you kind of see a pattern here. Everybody knew what Matt Lauer was doing. Everybody knew what Andrew Cuomo was doing. Everybody knew what Harvey Weinstein was doing. Actually, Charlie Rose, everybody knew he's walking around the set naked. Now, just think about this for a minute. If you went back to the office and there's a 68, 70-year-old man walking around naked, would you notice? I would notice. And I usually don't pay attention to those types of things, but I would notice. And I can tell you right now, no. Bystander intervention. That's the secret right there. Or you are just as evil, or maybe more so than the person who did it. Because there's a good argument that Jerry Sandusky is missing a screw. I'll tell you, I have this hanging in my office, and I want you to think about this. We want good workplaces, and the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of great moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. It's your job to speak up and not let these terrible things happen. And I think that's a good culture to have. Make sense? Well, let's look at the attackers here real quick, because they are sickeningly easy to deal with. Very easy. Okay, so have you ever met these folks? I tell it like it is. Hey, I'm just being honest. Well, you have to understand, I feel very strongly about this. Oh, okay, so if you're a pitcher, the sender of the message, and you feel very strongly about something, you got a perfect right to rip somebody's face off. And think of baseball. Think of baseball. If you're a pitcher and you throw the ball and bean the batter in the head, what happens? Does anybody have any input for me? You bean somebody in the head with a baseball at 90 miles an hour. What do you think's going to happen? Has anybody ever seen that happen? I've seen that happen. We call that hockey. Yeah, upset somebody. Thank you, Ryan. That's very diplomatic, okay? We pretty much clear the benches on that one. The bench is clear. Thank you, Morgan. Absolutely. So, yeah, the batter rushes the mound. Yeah, if the batter is still conscious, he's coming at you. Absolutely. And I can tell you, I like this. They always throw the bat down. I'm not going to drop that bat. I'm going to use it on you. Now, think about this. What gives somebody the right to attack an employee? Biggest part of our budget, the people who execute, and they might not be replaceable. I always ask them, would you talk to the president like that? Would you talk to a customer like that? Then what makes you think that we would ever let you do that to somebody else? And common sense gets you there, doesn't it? What happens if on the way home tonight, you go through the drive-thru and you yell at them? You look in that speaker and you say, hey, I don't want any of you morons in there spitting in my food either. What will they do? Any thoughts on that? Is that a good idea? Yeah, you hope it's spit. You hope that it's only spit. Yeah, they spit in your food, Ryan. Absolutely. They're all spitting on your food. Yes, absolutely. So don't be so surprised when you abuse somebody that they come back and get you. Now, can we talk about these topics, the more emotional? And I want you to think of your workplaces. Okay, we're all going to get together. We're all going to do a lunch and learn all together. I'm going to bring in pizza and Dairy Queen for dessert. Should we sit down and talk about whether or not you should wear a mask? Is that a good idea? Or maybe we get done with that one and we're going to sit down, we're going to have a good debate about vaccinations. Is that a good idea? What do you think? And these are important topics, and let me tell you, whatever happens in the workplace or whatever happens in the world today, you're going to be dealing with tomorrow. The world comes into the workplaces. You will be dealing with this. What are the chances that somebody's going to put a fork in somebody else's head? Probably pretty good, isn't it? Okay, now, you see the lack of emotional intelligence? I'm going to attack you because you disagree. Now, really, let's take this serious. Do you have a right to believe that masks will help you? Do you have a right to your opinion on masks? What do you think? You got a right to your opinion? Because I know these discussions are going on. Yes, you're absolutely, Ryan. Yes, yes, yes. I'm getting yeses from Beth and from Laura. I agree. 1,000%. Morgan's giving me a yes, yes. So you see the arrogance coming out? Yes, from Della, I'm getting exclamation points. Absolutely, Della. What makes my opinion so important that I got a right to attack you because you disagree? No. I have one question. You attack somebody over their opinion on vaccinations, on abortion, on religion, you do not have the right to do that. And now think about this. You've got to get yourself under control. You're an emotional child. Yes, but I don't have to force them on others. There you go, Laura. And quite frankly, what difference does it make to me what you think? Now, take this to heart. If you can't sit down, keep your cool, and talk about politics and religion, then how could you ever talk to someone about their job? Because think about it. Abortion, masking, whatever. Your opinion on political and religious topics is not going to affect your life this very second. But if I sit down to talk to you about a part of your job that you're not doing well, that's going to affect your life immediately. That is much more dangerous. Much more dangerous. So quite frankly, I want you ready to go in, use your empathy, you slow down, don't attack, don't retreat, and discuss the topic. This is the problem. People seem to think in the world today that you can attack folks because they disagree with you. I say our culture does not allow that. Got a good comment here from Beth. That is the problem with mandates. No discussion, forced. Yeah, we could spend quite a bit of time talking about the difference between someone's opinion and the requirements of the job, but honestly, it's okay if people disagree with me. That's okay. And let's look at one last thing here real quick. And this kind of gets to the crux of it. Is civility dead in our society? I don't know why the slides are not advancing. I have another meeting starting at 1. Okay, yeah, well, we're recording this, so you can pick it up, Della. Okay, is civility dead? I mean, this is what we do in today's world. Looks like it's not coming through too good. Napoleon is supposed to be slapping Kip and back and forth. Today we have a hang 'em high type of mentality, right? And I'll tell you, I don't care if it comes from the right or the left. If you disagree with me, I will attack you. Okay, so we go right to negative intent, right? One side attacks the other. That is not the way to do it, okay? And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, male, female, white, black, you don't have a right to attack somebody else. And look at this right here, Melissa Click, and think of the emotional meltdown that she had. Tim Tye is out there. He's a photojournalist for the University of Missouri. He's 22 years old. And here is Melissa Click, a communications professor, going berserk. So she is out there attacking Tim Tye, and he keeps his cool, just like a Jedi Knight, just fantastic. All right, you kind of see how she thinks. She calls out to her friends and says, we got to get some muscle over here to get this guy out of here. That is an attack. And I will tell you right now, that ruined her career. She lost her job with the University of Missouri. And I'll tell you, do you think she ever attacked people in the past? Yeah. Did we do her any favors at all by not coaching her, helping her? She made a mistake like most people do. That's what she did. And I'll tell you, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are coaching people, because I'll tell you, she made a mistake, she apologized, and I think we rehabilitate people. We don't cancel people because they made a single mistake. And I'll tell you, it's easy to set people up. And this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Cardinal Richelieu is burning in hell as we speak. If you give me 6 lines written by the hand of the most honest of men, I will find something in them which will hang him. Okay, very simple closing here. If I have a little punching bag, like when we were growing up, you know, those little cartoon punching bags there, if I punch that punching bag in the face, it's going to come back, isn't it? So I punch it harder, comes back again. That's what people do when you attack them. That's what they do. So we want to slow down and think, or you'll burn. Don't do that, because that is boomerang bigotry. You attack somebody, stab them in the back, or attack them to their face. You throw a boomerang at somebody, they're going to pick up that boomerang, and they're going to throw it right back at you. Or someone who looks like you. And it's got to stop. No attacking, no retreating, emotional intelligence, and building good workplaces. Okay, that is a lot of stuff. Great comments today. Questions, comments, deep concerns before we close it out?
We've got everybody unmuted, so if they'd like to unmute to ask any questions, they're welcome to. So thank you so much, Scott, for the webinar.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, okay, looks like no comments, and that's wonderful. So I will turn it back over to you, Victoria.
Thanks so much. And thank you everyone for your attendance. We were so glad that Scott was able to provide this webinar for us. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and think through what Scott has talked about on these 2 sessions and apply it in your work and in your home life. And I can tell you from personal experience, it will definitely make things much, much better. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Take
and
care.
If they're looking for more free videos, I've got them on my website. Knock themselves out.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.